The taste of betrayal, I've learned, is far more bitter than any sorrow, more corrosive than any acid. It lingers on the tongue, a constant reminder of a love once cherished, now turned to ash. For me, that taste became an unbearable reality on a crisp autumn evening, not when a rival stabbed me in the back, but when my own daughter, the very air I breathed, looked me dead in the eye and delivered the first, silent cut of 1,000 that would eventually bleed me dry. I remember the exact moment, the flickering candlelight on the expensive restaurant table, the clinking of champagne glasses celebrating what I thought was our future, and the cold, almost imperceptible shift in her gaze that spoke volumes of a truth I was too blind, too proud, too utterly devoted to see. That night, she toasted to my health, to my success, to our family, and I, a fool basking in the warmth of her feigned affection, raised my glass, utterly unaware that I was drinking to my own ruin, orchestrated by the one person I had vowed to protect above all else. This isn't just a story of revenge. It's an excavation of a life built on sand, a testament to how far a parent will go for their child, and the desolate chasm that opens when that love is weaponized. My name is Arthur Vance, and for decades, the Vance name was synonymous with innovation and integrity in the world of bespoke luxury watches. Vance Timepieces wasn't just a company. It was my life's blood, a legacy built from the ground up, fueled by sleepless nights, relentless pursuit of perfection, and an unwavering belief in craftsmanship. It was a heritage I had envisioned passing down to my beloved daughter, Eleanor. From the moment she was a tiny thing, her curious fingers tracing the intricate gears of a watch movement, I saw my reflection, my purpose, my continuation. I had no sons, nor did I want any. Eleanor was my singular joy, my only child, and the designated heir to everything I had painstakingly created. I showered her with opportunities, sent her to the finest schools, brought her into the business at a young age, patiently teaching her every facet, from the delicate art of watchmaking to the ruthless precision of global finance. She absorbed it all, or so I believed, displaying an uncanny intelligence, a sharp business acumen, and a charm that could disarm even the most hardened negotiator. She was, in my eyes, perfect. My successor, the jewel in my crown. Our bond, I thought, was unbreakable. We were a team, a formidable force against the cutthroat currents of the market. After her mother, my dear wife Evelyn, passed away too soon from a sudden illness, Eleanor became my anchor, my confidant, my only remaining family. The grief had been a gaping wound, but Eleanor's presence, her quiet strength and unwavering support, had been the salve. We leaned on each other, forging an even deeper connection through shared sorrow. I poured my love, my wisdom, my entire being into preparing her to take the reins. When I finally announced my intention to step back, to transition the CEO role to her, it felt like the natural culmination of a lifelong dream. The board approved, the press buzzed, and Eleanor, radiant and poised, accepted the mantle with grace. I watched her address the shareholders, her voice clear and confident, and felt a surge of paternal pride so potent it brought tears to my eyes. This was it. My legacy secured. My daughter, ascendant. The first tremor of unease, subtle as a whisper in a silent room, came not from any direct action, but from a change in atmosphere. Eleanor, once so eager for my counsel, began to subtly distance herself. Meetings I was accustomed to attending were suddenly internal. Decisions I would typically be consulted on were made without my input. At first, I dismissed it as her finding her own footing, asserting her independence. It's good, Arthur, I told myself. She's growing. I reveled in the idea of her thriving, even if it meant a slight redefinition of our professional relationship. But the professional distance soon bled into the personal. Our weekly Sunday dinners, once a sacred ritual, became sporadic, then canceled with increasingly vague excuses. Her calls grew shorter, her texts less frequent. When I tried to engage her in discussions about the company, her answers were curt, dismissive. It felt like walking on eggshells around a stranger who wore my daughter's face. Then came the changes within Vance Timepieces itself. Acquisitions of smaller, niche brands, risky ventures I would have never approved, were pushed through with surprising speed. Traditional marketing strategies, deeply rooted in our brand's identity, were abruptly overhauled in favor of flashy, untested digital campaigns. Our meticulous, old-world craftsmanship began to yield to mass-production techniques, subtly altering the very essence of what made a Vance watch unique. When I cautiously raised my concerns to her, reminding her of our brand's core values, of the legacy we were entrusted with, her eyes, once so warm and expressive, would harden. "Father," she'd say, her voice laced with an exasperated impatience, "the market is evolving. We have to adapt or die. This is my vision now." And each time she uttered those words, my vision, a cold tendril of doubt would coil around my heart. It wasn't the sound of a CEO taking charge. It was the sound of a door slamming shut. My suspicions, initially just a faint, nagging discomfort, began to crystallize into something more concrete when I noticed familiar faces disappearing from the executive ranks. Old guard employees, loyal to Vance timepieces for decades, suddenly retired or resigned for personal reasons. These were people who had been with me through thick and thin, who knew the company inside and out, whose integrity was beyond reproach. Their replacements were young, ambitious, and fiercely loyal to Eleanor. One evening, I ran into Thomas, our longtime head of product development, at a quiet jazz club. Thomas, a man who loved watchmaking more than life itself, looked gaunt, his eyes hollow. After a few drinks, his usual stoicism crumbled. "She gutted us, Arthur," he whispered, his voice thick with pain. "She systematically removed anyone who questioned her, anyone who spoke of your legacy. She wants to tear it all down and rebuild it in her own image, no matter the cost." The words hit me like a physical blow. It wasn't just my legacy she was disrespecting. It was our shared history, our collective dream. This wasn't merely ambition. It was something far more ruthless, far more sinister. The revelations continued, each one a nail in the coffin of my trust. A series of perplexing financial maneuvers began to surface in the company's quarterly reports. Complex shell corporations, opaque offshore accounts, and significant capital injections into seemingly unrelated ventures. These weren't standard business practices for Vance timepieces. They reeked of subterfuge. I tried to access the deeper financial records, something I, as founder and a major shareholder, was entitled to do, but I was met with bureaucratic stonewalling and vague legal jargon. Eleanor's office, once always open to me, was now impenetrable, guarded by a frosty assistant who politely but firmly blocked my every attempt to get a straight answer. The company I built, the company I believed was safe in my daughter's hands, was becoming a fortress from which I was being systematically locked out. The betrayal deepened, twisting from professional sabotage to a direct assault on my personal life. My beloved lakeside retreat, a tranquil haven where Evelyn and I had spent our happiest moments, was suddenly under threat. I had planned to leave it to Eleanor, a cherished family heirloom. But then, a series of unsolicited offers to buy the property began to appear, each more aggressive than the last. I dismissed them, but the persistence was unnerving. One afternoon, while reviewing my personal financial statements, I discovered a significant, unauthorized transfer from one of my long-term investment accounts. The sum was substantial enough to send a chill down my spine. When I confronted Eleanor, her demeanor was unervingly calm. "Father," she sighed, "I simply diversified some of your assets. The market is volatile, and I was looking out for your best interests. You're getting older. You shouldn't have to worry about these things." The patronizing tone, the thinly veiled condescension, felt like a slap. It wasn't diversification, it was a raid, a deliberate erosion of my financial independence, calculated to make me more reliant on her, more helpless. The climax of her avarice, the moment of undeniable, soul-crushing clarity, arrived with a legal document delivered to my doorstep by a somber-faced courier. It was a formal notice of a hostile takeover bid for Vance timepieces. The orchestrator, a shadowy investment firm with a reputation for stripping assets and gutting established companies. But the true horror wasn't just the loss of my company. It was the name listed as the primary shareholder behind the acquisition. Eleanor, my own daughter, through a labyrinthine network of shell companies and proxy investors, was attempting to buy out the very company I had gifted her. This wasn't merely about ambition or a difference in vision. It was a premeditated, cold-blooded heist. She wasn't building her own empire. She was seizing mine, intending to liquidate decades of legacy for a quick, substantial profit. The realization hit me like a rogue wave, knocking the wind out of me, leaving me gasping for air in a sea of despair. The daughter I had loved, nurtured, and placed above all others was a predator, and I, her unsuspecting prey. The immediate aftermath was a blur of raw emotion. Fury, yes, a searing, incandescent rage that threatened to consume me. But beneath it, a profound, aching grief for the daughter I thought I knew, for the trust that had been so brutally violated. I retreated into my study, the sanctuary where I had designed countless watches, now a tomb for my shattered dreams. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by the frantic drumming of my own heart. I stared at the framed photograph on my desk. Eleanor, as a child, beaming, clutching a tiny watch in her hands. The innocence in her eyes mocked me, a painful contrast to the calculating woman she had become. The betrayal felt absolute, unforgivable. Sleep offered no escape. Her smiling, treacherous face haunted my dreams. The urge to lash out, to confront her in a storm of accusations, was almost overpowering. But even in my darkest hour, a flicker of my old self, the strategist, the meticulous craftsman, began to stir. If she had planned her treachery with such surgical precision, then my response would have to be equally, if not more, cunning. I knew I couldn't fight her with brute force. She controlled the company, held the loyalty of the new board members, and had effectively frozen me out of all operational decisions. She had anticipated my emotional response, counting on my grief and outrage to paralyze me. But she underestimated me. She forgot who had taught her to play this game. My mind, though clouded by pain, began to clear, focusing not on vengeance in the heat of the moment, but on a carefully orchestrated, slow-burn retaliation. I had poured my life into Vance timepieces, and I knew its every secret, its every vulnerability, its every strength. I would use that intimate knowledge against her. My revenge wouldn't be loud or messy. It would be elegant, precise, and utterly devastating. It would be a mirror reflecting her own ruthlessness, but amplified, magnified, and public. She wanted to strip me of my legacy. I would strip her of everything. My first step was to disappear from her radar. I stopped calling, stopped emailing, stopped attempting to reach her. I allowed her to believe she had won, that I was a broken, defeated old man. This was crucial. She needed to feel secure, confident in her victory, to let her guard down. I cultivated an image of passive despair, withdrawing from all social engagements, letting rumors circulate about my failing health and dwindling mental faculties. My former colleagues, the few who still dared to speak to me, expressed their condolences, their pity. I let them. Each sympathetic glance, each hushed murmur, was a drop of fuel on the fire of my resolve. While she toasted her new empire, I was meticulously gathering intelligence, like a master craftsman selecting the perfect tools for a complex repair. I hired a discreet team of forensic accountants and cybersecurity experts, instructing them to comb through every transaction, every digital footprint, every anomaly within Vance timepieces since Eleanor took over. I wanted irrefutable proof, not just of her betrayal, but of her illegal machinations. The information my team uncovered was both appalling and illuminating. The complex shell corporations and offshore accounts weren't just for a hostile takeover. They were systematically siphoning company assets, funneling millions into Eleanor's personal accounts and those of her inner circle. The rapid acquisitions she'd pushed through were highly leveraged, designed to inflate the company's value artificially before a planned public offering. Her new vision for Vance timepieces was a facade, a smokescreen for asset stripping, and a meticulously planned pump-and-dump scheme. The quality compromises? Deliberate. The dismissals of loyal employees? To silence anyone who might question her methods. She wasn't just planning to sell my company. She was planning to destroy its reputation, its soul, for short-term personal gain. And her accomplices weren't just the new, ambitious executives. They included several long-standing board members, blinded by greed, swayed by Eleanor's charisma and promises of immense wealth. The depth of the conspiracy was staggering, extending far beyond my initial fears. My daughter had become the queen of a criminal enterprise. This discovery hardened my resolve, cementing the path I had chosen. My revenge wouldn't just expose Eleanor. It would dismantle her entire network, leaving her utterly isolated and disgraced. I began to piece together my own team, not of employees, but of allies bound by loyalty and shared outrage. Thomas, my former head of product development, proved invaluable. He had meticulously documented every change, every compromise in craftsmanship, every whispered fear among the old guard. He had a deep, visceral love for Vance timepieces and a burning desire to see its integrity restored. He became my inside man, a silent observer within the very heart of Eleanor's crumbling empire, feeding me crucial real-time updates and corroborating the forensic evidence. We worked in secret, exchanging coded messages, meeting in shadowed corners of old cafes. The thrill of the chase, the meticulous planning, began to replace the crushing weight of grief. I was no longer a victim. I was a hunter. The key to my plan lay not in immediate confrontation, but in patiently waiting for the perfect moment, the moment of maximum public impact. Eleanor was preparing for a grand relaunch of Vance timepieces, rebranding it under a new, modern name. A final, symbolic erasure of my legacy. She had planned an elaborate press conference, a lavish gala event attended by industry titans, financial journalists, and influential social media personalities. This, I decided, would be her stage and also her gallows. I envisioned a meticulously crafted presentation, a story unveiled not by me directly, but by the irrefutable evidence itself. My goal wasn't just to reclaim my company, but to utterly obliterate her reputation, to ensure that her name would forever be synonymous with greed and treachery. I wanted to see the masks fall from her co-conspirators' faces, to watch the entire house of cards collapse in real time, for the entire world to witness. While my team continued to gather evidence, I focused on the emotional core of my strategy. I knew Eleanor thrived on public adoration, on maintaining a flawless facade. My revenge needed to target that, to turn her greatest strength into her most profound weakness. I remembered her favorite saying when she was young, a quote from a historical figure about how truth always finds its way to the light. I would twist that truth into a weapon, a spotlight so blinding it would expose every shadow she had tried to hide. I compiled a detailed dossier, not just of financial crimes, but of every personal slight, every condescending remark, every instance of emotional manipulation she had inflicted on me and others. This was not for legal purposes, but for the court of public opinion. I wanted to paint a picture of a remorseless manipulator, stripping away her carefully constructed image of the brilliant, empathetic CEO. My health, which I had allowed to appear frail, began to genuinely suffer from the stress and the clandestine work. The sleepless nights, once fueled by paternal devotion, were now consumed by a relentless pursuit of justice. Yet, a strange sense of purpose invigorated me. This wasn't about anger anymore. It was about honoring the legacy of Vance timepieces, about protecting the livelihoods of the loyal employees she had cast aside, and about confronting the monster my love had unwittingly helped create. There were moments, fleeting and painful, when I would remember the little girl who would run into my arms, her laughter echoing through the halls of our home. Those memories were a double-edged sword, a reminder of what was lost, but also a stark illustration of how far she had fallen and why she needed to be stopped. The final piece of the puzzle arrived, delivered by my cybersecurity expert, an encrypted hard drive containing a complete mirror of Eleanor's private digital communications, emails, messages, even voice notes. It was a goldmine of incriminating evidence, detailing her meticulous planning, her callous disregard for the company's future, and shockingly, her explicit contempt for me. In one chilling voice note, she laughed with a confidant about how the old man is so sentimental, he practically handed me the keys to the kingdom. The casual cruelty, the utter lack of remorse, solidified my resolve. Any lingering doubt, any flicker of paternal love, was extinguished by the icy certainty of her malevolence. She was beyond redemption, and I would be the one to orchestrate her fall. The day of Eleanor's grand relaunch arrived with the fanfare and spectacle she had so meticulously planned. The venue was the city's most opulent concert hall, transformed into a dazzling showcase of Vance innovations, her new, soulless rebranding. Industry leaders mingled, Champagne flowed, and a palpable buzz filled the air. Eleanor, resplendent in a custom-designed gown, her smile a beacon of fabricated confidence, commanded the stage. She began her presentation, a slick, rehearsed speech about modernization, vision, and the exciting future of the brand. Her voice, amplified by the state-of-the-art sound system, echoed through the hall, weaving a narrative of her genius. I watched from a private box, a shadowy figure amidst the dazzled crowd, a ghost at my own company's funeral. My heart hammered against my ribs, not from fear, but from a potent cocktail of anticipation and righteous fury. The moment was upon us. As Eleanor reached the crescendo of her speech, projecting a stunning new watch design onto the massive screen behind her, Thomas, my loyal ally, executed the first phase of our plan. From a discreet control booth, he injected a prepared script into the presentation's main server. The vibrant watch rendering flickered, then abruptly vanished, replaced by a series of headlines, news reports, and financial documents, all bearing the bold, unmistakable watermark, Arthur Vance, for your consideration. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. Eleanor, initially confused, tried to laugh it off, gesturing for the technicians to fix the glitch. But the screen refused to cooperate. Instead, the first forensic accounting report flashed into view, detailing the initial, unauthorized transfer from my personal account, followed by a chronological breakdown of the larger asset siphoning from Vance Timepieces into Eleanor's offshore holdings. The numbers were stark, irrefutable, and devastatingly clear. Panic began to ripple through the room. Whispers escalated into murmurs, then outright exclamations. Eleanor's face, moments ago radiating confidence, contorted into a mask of disbelief, then dawning horror. She stammered, attempting to regain control, but her words were swallowed by the growing commotion. Then came the second wave. The screen transitioned to a montage of internal company communications, the coded emails, the clandestine messages, the damning voice notes I had painstakingly gathered. Eleanor's own voice, clear and chilling, filled the hall. The old man is so sentimental. He practically handed me the keys to the kingdom. He won't even know what hit him. The laughter that followed was like a dagger twisting in my gut, yet I felt no pain, only the cold satisfaction of watching her perfect world crumble. Faces in the audience, particularly those of the newly appointed board members, shifted from confusion to abject terror as their names and complicit actions appeared on screen. The final, crushing blow came with the projection of my official statement, clear and concise, detailing the full extent of Eleanor's fraud, the hostile takeover attempt, and the systematic dismantling of Vance Timepieces' integrity. It announced my immediate legal action, not just against Eleanor, but against every single conspirator. The police, acting on a warrant I had secured earlier that day, discreetly entered the hall, their presence unmistakable. Eleanor, now pale and trembling, finally abandoned the podium, her eyes frantically searching the crowd, landing on my private box. Our gazes locked. In her eyes, I saw not anger, but a profound, naked fear, and perhaps a fleeting shadow of understanding of the enormity of her miscalculation. I offered her nothing, no sympathy, no acknowledgement, just the cold, unwavering stare of a father who had been pushed beyond the brink, a man who had meticulously designed her downfall. The scene descended into chaos. Reporters, sensing a monumental scoop, surged forward, their cameras flashing, microphones thrust at Eleanor and the implicated board members. Security struggled to contain the pandemonium. Eleanor was led away, her carefully constructed image shattered, her opulent gown now seeming like a cruel mockery of her true character. Her conspirators scattered, their faces etched with panic, knowing their carefully guarded secrets were now laid bare for the world to see. Vance Timepieces, the company she had tried to steal and destroy, was in turmoil, but it was alive. The integrity, though tarnished, could be restored. My name, once threatened with erasure, was now synonymous with justice. The taste of betrayal still lingered, but now, mixed with it, was the unexpected sweetness of redemption, a quiet vindication. In the ensuing weeks, the legal battles were fierce and drawn out, but the evidence was overwhelming. Eleanor, along with her co-conspirators, faced the full force of the law. The public outcry was immense, a cascade of condemnation that swept away her every remaining shred of credibility. Vance's timepieces, though reeling, began the long process of healing, guided by the return of loyal employees and a renewed commitment to its founding principles. I didn't return to the CEO chair. That era was over. Instead, I dedicated myself to being a guardian of the legacy, ensuring that the company's soul remained intact. My revenge was complete, not just in its execution, but in its profound impact. I had stripped Eleanor of her ill-gotten gains, her carefully cultivated reputation, and her freedom. She had sought to build her empire on my ruins, but instead, I had become the architect of her downfall, a testament to the enduring truth that some bonds, once broken, can never be repaired, and some betrayals demand a retribution as precise and unforgiving as the tick of a masterfully crafted watch. The silence around me is different now. It's not the quiet of despair, but the calm after a storm, a stillness where the true weight of justice has finally settled.